The blind servant was beaten in the streets until the alpha vampire said, "I'll be her sight." Even at night, the stones whispered. Boots struck the roads, chains rattled, bells cried from distant towers. The air smelled of ash, rain, and old blood that never truly washed away. Eldermere was a city ruled by crowns during the day and by fear after sunset. Among its endless streets walked a girl who could not see. Her name was Illyra. She moved slowly, her steps careful, her hand brushing the cold wall beside her. She counted each breath, each sound, each shift in the air. The city was a map inside her mind. She knew where the stones dipped, where the alley narrowed, where danger usually waited. Illyra had learned long ago that blindness did not make her weak, but it made others cruel. She wore the plain gray dress of a servant, patched, worn, and too thin for the season. Once she had lived behind palace walls, serving a noble lady who treated her with rare kindness. Once she had slept under a roof where voices were soft and footsteps gentle. That life ended the night the bells rang for execution. Her mistress was accused of treason against the crown. No trial, no mercy. By dawn the noble house had fallen, its servants scattered like dust in the wind. Illyra was turned out into the streets with nothing but her cane and the memory of warmer days. Now she belonged to Eldermere, and Eldermere did not care. As Illyra turned a corner, laughter broke the night air. She stopped. 3 sets of footsteps approached, uneven, careless. She could smell ale on their breath before they spoke. "Well, look at that," one voice said. "The blind rat is back."
Another laughed, still walking like she owns the street.
She had learned that silence sometimes helped.
"I'm just passing through,"
she said softly. "Please." Her voice trembled, though she tried to steady it. A hand struck her shoulder. She stumbled, barely catching herself against the wall. "Maybe she dropped something," a man said. "Let's check." Someone kicked her cane away. It clattered across the stones, leaving her blind in a way far worse than before. Fear curled in her chest like cold smoke. She knelt, hands shaking as she searched the ground. "Please," she said again. "I can't see."
"I can't fight." "That's why it's fun,"
one of them replied. A sharp pain bloomed across her arm, then another. She cried out, the sound swallowed by the street's cruel echoes. No one came. No one ever did. Blood ran warm down her skin, dripping onto stone. And somewhere deep beneath Eldermere, something ancient stirred. The moment Illyra's blood touched the ground, the shadows changed. They thickened. The laughter stopped. A cold wind moved through the street, though the night had been still seconds before. Footsteps echoed again, slow this time, steady, heavy with authority. The men froze. A voice spoke from the dark, low, calm, dangerous. That is enough. Illyra felt it before she understood it. The air pressed down, heavy and sharp, like standing too close to a storm. One of the men swallowed hard. We didn't know." "You knew," the voice replied. "You always know." The street itself seemed to bow beneath his presence. I will not repeat myself. There was a sound, something between a breath and a growl. Then silence fell again, thick and complete. The men fled. Their footsteps faded fast, leaving only Illyra kneeling on the stone, shaking, bleeding, and confused. She waited for the stranger to leave too. He did not. Instead, he knelt before her. She sensed him then, not just danger, but control. Restraint. A power held tightly, like a blade never drawn without reason. "You are hurt," he said. His voice was quieter now. Illyra nodded, unable to speak. "May I touch you?" he asked. The question surprised her more than the pain. "Yes," she whispered. His hand brushed her arm, not rough, not cold as she expected, but careful, almost gentle. The bleeding slowed beneath his touch, warmth spreading where there had been fire. "You walk these streets often," he said. "I have no choice," Illyra replied. A pause. "No one should suffer for being unseen," he said. She felt his gaze on her face. Not pity. Something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or recognition. "What is your name?" he asked. "Illyra." Another pause, longer this time. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. She shook her head. "I am Vaelric," he said, "King of the Night Court, Alpha of the vampire houses." Her breath caught. Everyone in Eldamir knew that name, a ruler who did not sit on the human throne, a shadow king who governed the dark so humans could pretend they ruled the light, a monster in stories, a god in whispers. Fear should have filled her. It did not. Instead, something strange happened. The darkness around her shifted. Suddenly, light exploded behind her eyes. Illyra gasped. She could see. Stone walls, flickering lanterns, the blood on her hands, and before her, tall, pale, eyes like silver fire, ancient and sharp, dark hair falling loose around a face carved by time and sorrow. He looked at her as if she were something fragile and dangerous. Her heart raced. "What is happening?" she whispered. "You are seeing," Vaelric said slowly. "Through me."
Illyra trembled. I can see you."
She reached out, touching his face as if afraid the vision would vanish. "Why?" she asked. Vaelric had ruled for centuries. He had commanded armies, ended wars, and buried every feeling that ever made him weak. Yet in that moment, kneeling before a blind servant in a broken street, he felt something crack. "I don't know," he said truthfully. Then, as if bound by an old magic neither of them understood, he spoke words that would change the fate of the kingdom. "I will be your sight." The shadow seemed to breathe. Illyra stared at him, seeing the world for the first time in years, through the eyes of a monster who had chosen her. And somewhere above them, the stars watched in silence, because curses had begun to awaken. And nothing in Eldamir would ever be the same again. Not the loud silence of the streets filled with hidden danger, but a soft and careful quiet. The air smelled different, cleaner, older, touched with stone and cold fire. Beneath her fingers was smooth fabric, not broken stone. For a moment, fear returned. Then she opened her eyes. She could see. Tall windows rose along the chamber walls, filled with dark glass that reflected candlelight like still water. The ceiling arched high above her, carved with symbols she did not understand. Heavy curtains stirred as if breathing. She sat up quickly. The world did not fade. Her heart began to race. "I can still see," she whispered. "You will," a voice said from the shadows, "as long as I am awake." Vaelric stepped into the light. He wore dark clothing, simple but fine, as if he needed no crown to be known as king. His presence filled the room without effort. Illyra felt it even before she looked at him. The same controlled power, the same careful restraint. "Where am I?" she asked. "My citadel," Vaelric replied. "The Night Court." Illyra swallowed. She had heard stories of this place since childhood, of halls where vampires ruled, where humans never entered unless summoned. "I didn't agree to come here," she said softly. "You were bleeding in the street," Vaelric replied. "If I had left you there, you would be dead." She did not argue. She knew it was true. Illyra lowered her gaze, suddenly aware of the thin servant dress she wore, of how small she must look in this vast room, before a being who ruled the night.
"I don't understand what you did to me," she said.
"I can see, but it feels borrowed, like it could disappear." Vaelric's eyes narrowed slightly. "You are seeing through me," he said. "Through my senses. It is a blood-bound link." Her breath caught. "Blood?" "You were already bleeding," he said calmly. "The bond formed easily." Illyra's hands tightened in the blanket. "So my sight belongs to you," she said. Silence stretched between them. "Yes," Velric answered at last. The truth of it settled heavily in her chest. She could see the world now, colors, faces, firelight, but only because he allowed it. Her freedom rested in his awareness. If he slept, if he turned away, the world would vanish again.
Power flowed in one direction only.
I won't pretend this is fair, Velric said, but I will not abuse it. Alira looked at him, really looked, not a monster from stories, but a king who seemed carved from shadow and sorrow. I don't trust easily, she said. I would be disappointed if you did, he replied. Later, servants arrived, silent, respectful, careful not to meet Alira's eyes. They brought clean clothes, warm food, and water scented with herbs. Alira noticed how they avoided Velric's gaze, how even immortals bowed their heads in his presence. When Velric left the room, the world dimmed. Not darkness, but distance. As if she were looking through glass instead of air. She gasped. He paused at the door. I am still here, he said.
Just farther away. The world sharpened again as he returned. Alira's hands shook.
So this is how it will be, she said quietly. I follow where you go. I see when you choose. For now, Velric said. For now, she repeated, unsure if that comforted her or frightened her more. As days passed, Alira learned the rhythm of the citadel. She walked its halls beside Velric, guided not by her old cane, but by his steady presence. Through his eyes she saw marble floors, dark gardens, and courtyards lit by moonfire instead of sun. The night court watched her closely. Some vampires looked at her with open dislike, others with interest that made her skin prickle. Whispers followed her steps. That's the human. He walks beside the alpha. Is she a tool or a weakness? Alira felt their stares even when she could not see them clearly. At night, Velric brought her to the high balcony overlooking Eldermere. The city spread below like a living map of lights and shadows. You rule all this, Alira said. I protect it, Velric replied. There is a difference. She considered that. Do humans know? They know enough to sleep, he said. One evening, Alira asked the question that had been burning inside her. Why me? Velric did not answer at once. When your blood touched the street, he said slowly, it awakened something old. Something bound to this land. Alira's chest tightened. I'm just a servant. No, Velric said. You were made one. She turned toward him. What does that mean? Before he could answer, footsteps echoed behind them. A tall vampire approached, his expression sharp and cold. My king, he said. The council demands your presence. Velric's jaw tightened. They can wait. They are afraid, the vampire said, glancing at Alira. And fear does not wait.
Velric looked down at Alira. I must go, he said.
Stay here. The moment he turned away, the world dimmed again. Alira stood alone on the balcony, wrapped in borrowed sight and borrowed safety. She wondered which would disappear first. That night, she overheard voices beyond her chamber door.
She cannot stay,
A woman's voice hissed.
the prophecy. Lower your voice, another replied.
If the Alpha hears! Alira, Velric's voice cut through them like steel. Go to your chambers. He entered moments later. What prophecy? Alira asked. Velric's face was unreadable. One that should have remained buried, he said. Her heart pounded. What does it say? That a blind soul will either end the night crown, he said, or redeem it. Alira felt the weight of his gaze. And no one knows which. Then Alira spoke, her voice steady despite the fear twisting inside her. If I am a danger, she said, then let me go. That, he said quietly, is no longer simple. Because somewhere between darkness and sight something had already begun to change. Alira could no longer pretend that the borrowed world she saw through Velric's eyes belonged only to him. Each night as she slept in her chamber, her mind replayed the streets where she had been beaten, the alley where he had saved her, the way his hand had brushed her arm with careful strength. She had felt a connection then, unspoken but undeniable. Now in the halls of the night court the connection had grown, threading between them like invisible silk. But the more she saw, the more she realized how fragile the bond was. If he withdrew even for a moment, the world would vanish from her eyes. And yet, each day she walked beside him, learning the pulse of the citadel. She could sense something ancient stirring, not only in the city, but in herself. A heat of power that had slept in her blood since birth, waiting. It began one afternoon when Werewolf led her into the inner library, a room larger than many streets in Eldermere. Shelves stretched to the vaulted ceiling, holding tomes bound in leather and shadow. Dust swirled in the candlelight, falling like silver snow. Alara could feel the energy in the room, but it was different from the borrowed sight. It felt like something alive calling to her. "Do you feel it?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but the words seemed to echo in the space. Werewolf watched her carefully, his silver eyes reflecting the glow of the candles. "It is in your blood," he said, "and in the curse that surrounds you." Alara frowned. "Curse?" He nodded slowly. "Your blindness was no accident. You were born under a spell, bound to the power of an ancient line. Your ancestors carried it, and it has passed to you. It was meant to hide you, to protect, or perhaps to punish. Even I only know part of it." Alira's hands shook as she touched the spines of the books. "So I am not just a servant. I am dangerous," Joe Werewolf said. "But yes. Dangerous because your blood contains a power that could challenge the Night Crown itself." She swallowed hard. "And you saved me because I felt it the moment I saw your blood," Valric admitted. "I felt the magic that was sleeping, and I knew you could not survive in the streets." Alira stared at him. Her mind struggled to hold all of this. She had thought him a monster. Perhaps he still was. But now she could see that the monster carried regret and perhaps even sorrow. Then, "You saved me because you wanted to use me." Velric's lips tightened. "No."
I saved you because you were being destroyed, and because I
could not turn away. Alira's chest tightened. Something in her shifted. She had walked a world of cruelty for so long that she had stopped hoping for mercy. And here was this being, centuries older than any man, claiming to care, claiming he had chosen to save her. Days passed. Alira's power began to stir, tiny sparks she could barely notice. A book would slide open when her hand brushed it. Candles would flicker in rhythm with her heartbeat. Sometimes she could hear whispers from the stone walls, voices calling her name, warning her, guiding her. It terrified her, but it also excited her. She was no longer helpless. Not entirely. Yet Werewolf remained the anchor of her sight. Without him, the world dimmed. Without him, she was nothing. That dependence gnawed at her, blending fear with admiration, unease with longing. She hated herself for it. One night, as rain pelted the high windows, Werewolf brought her to the balcony overlooking Eldermere. The city shimmered with lanterns and mist. He leaned close, his silver eyes reflecting the moonlight. "You are changing," he said softly. "Do you feel it?" "Yes," she whispered. "Something is waking inside me, something I don't understand." "And yet," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, "you are still tied to me. Your sight, your strength, they flow through our bond." "And if you leave me? Or if I leave you?" "Do not think of that," he said. "For now, you are my charge. I am your sight, and I will not break that." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust him. But doubt was a shadow she could not shake. For every gentle word, every careful gesture, he carried centuries of rule and cruelty, and she could not forget it. She could not forget that he was, in some ways, a predator, a being who had ended wars, crushed enemies, and held the power to destroy kingdoms. The tension between them became a rhythm, unspoken but undeniable. Alira would try to speak her thoughts to assert herself, only for Valeric to answer softly, guiding her hand, steadying her steps, reminding her that her vision was borrowed. And yet, each correction, each gesture, felt intimate, and she hated that she felt drawn to him, in spite of fear and caution. Then, one evening, whispers turned into warnings. Alira had ventured into the garden courtyard with Valeric. Moonlight poured over statues of creatures she did not recognize, dragons with twisted wings, serpents with eyes of crystal. Something stirred in the shadows.
"She is awakening," a voice hissed from behind the columns. Alira froze.
She recognized the voice from the council, one of the elder vampires. "Awakening what?" she asked, her voice trembling. The figure stepped forward, revealing a man whose eyes gleamed with suspicion and hunger. "The blood curse," he said. "Do you know what she carries? The line of power she has inherited. It could end all of us." Valeric stepped forward, his presence towering over the courtyard. "She is under my protection," he said, his voice calm, sharp as a blade. "And you will not touch her." The elder vampire bowed, but the words remained in Alira's mind.
"And all of us." The meaning was clear.
She was dangerous, not only to herself, but to the Night Court, to the city, and perhaps to Valeric himself. A cold fear settled in her chest. She had survived the streets. She had survived the hands of cruel humans. But now, she realized, survival meant more than escaping harm. Survival meant mastering the curse inside her, controlling the power she barely understood, and balancing her bond with a being older than time. That night, in her chamber, she could not sleep. She sat by the window, tracing the rain as it fell in lines across the glass. Her thoughts turned to Valeric, his silver eyes, the calm strength of his voice, the way he had touched her arm that first night. She hated that she longed for him, and she hated that she felt safer because of him. Yet fear and longing often walked together. Suddenly a sharp pain struck her chest. She gasped, clutching her heart. Images flashed in her mind, ancestors she did not know, a woman walking blind in a shadowed forest, a scream echoing across time. She realized then that the curse was older than she had imagined. Her blindness had not been an accident. Her family line had carried a magic that the Night Crown had sought to control or destroy. And Valeric had saved her, yes, but for reasons that might include both atonement and duty. The revelation left her shaken. If the curse were powerful enough to threaten the Night Court, what did it mean for her? For him? For the bond between them? Valeric entered the chamber then, silent as the shadows. He paused, studying her. "The curse is awakening," he said. "I can feel it in you now, and soon others will feel it too." Alira looked at him, her eyes wide. "Others?" "The rival houses, those who fear what you might become," he said. "You are no longer just a servant, you are a force. And they will not wait for you to understand it." Her chest tightened with panic and confusion. "Then what am I to do?" Valeric stepped closer. "Trust me," he said simply.
"I will guide you. But this will change everything."
Alira's vision blurred. Was it tears or magic? She could not tell. She realized with a mixture of fear and wonder that the future was no longer something she could predict. The streets had been simple. This city had been cruel, but known. Here, in the Night Court, nothing was certain, not even her own heart. She wanted to step back, to retreat to the safety of blindness. But the bond between them would not allow it, and deep down she feared that if she did, she would never see the world, or Valeric, again. As she looked at him, the shadows of the room seemed to twist. A presence beyond them stirred. A dark force that had slept for centuries, awakened by her blood and the bond they shared. And then she understood the truth. This was only the beginning. The storm had passed, leaving the citadel soaked in moonlight and silence. Alira stood on the balcony, her hands pressed against the cold stone. Below, Eldemir slept, oblivious to the forces that had stirred in its heart. Above, the sky was empty, as if waiting for something to change. Valric did not speak. He had not spoken all night. The bond between them hummed, stronger than ever, yet fragile. For the first time in centuries, he was not in full control. He could feel the curse pulsing in Illyra's blood, and it frightened him. A power so old, so raw, that even he, the immortal ruler of the night, could not contain it alone. "You are awake," she said softly, turning to him. He inclined his head. "I feel it," he said quietly. "The curse, it is fully stirring now. You are ready." Illyra's chest tightened. "I do not know if I am ready. I do not know if I can control it."
"You can," Valric said, "and I will help you. But you must trust yourself and me."
She studied him. He looked smaller somehow, not in size, but in the way his immortal presence wavered under the weight of her awakening. The first time she understood, their bond was not only his gift, it was also her responsibility. And soon, she would need to stand alone. The courtyard below was quiet. Shadows moved, restless, waiting for the moment to strike. The council of elder vampires who had feared her power had gathered. They did not understand that Illyra's power could destroy them or save them. They did not understand that she no longer walked only in borrowed sight, but in her own growing strength. Valric led her down to the courtyard. Each step was careful, deliberate. The bond thrummed in her chest like a second heartbeat. And with each step, Illyra felt the curse calling to her, whispering in a language older than the citadel itself. The council waited, faces stern, hands clenched. "She is dangerous," one said. "She cannot remain here." "She will remain," Valric said. His voice cut through the night like steel. "She belongs to no one but herself, and to me, by choice." Illyra's pulse quickened. This was the moment she had feared and longed for, the moment when she would either break or become what the prophecy had foretold. She lifted her head. For the first time she saw clearly, not through Valric, but through herself. Her vision was sharp, her awareness was complete. And for the first time, she could feel her own magic flowing through her veins like fire and ice. "I am ready," she said. The council murmured, uncertain. One vampire stepped forward. "Do you understand what you are saying? This power, it could kill us all." "I understand," she said.
"And I will not harm the innocent, but I will not hide either."
Valric stepped close. His presence steadied her. "You are stronger than you know," he whispered. "And I will stand with you." Illyra looked at him. Really looked, for the first time. She saw the centuries of grief in his eyes, the burden of rule, the guilt he carried for choices made long before she was born. And she understood that this bond, this strange, fragile, impossible connection, was not just about sight. It was about trust, about choice, about redemption. "Together, then," she said. Valric nodded. He extended his hand. She took it, feeling the warmth of his immortal skin, the pulse of his ancient heart, and then she felt it, the bond reversing, flowing both ways. For the first time he could feel her power as she could feel him. They were equals now, not master and servant, not predator and prey, but two beings linked by fate and choice. The curse howled in the air, a voice of wind and shadow, shaking the stones beneath their feet. Shadows rose from the ground, dark and alive, attempting to reach them, to strike, to claim. But Illyra lifted her hands, and with a single thought, the shadows froze. The power that had terrified the Night Court now bent to her will. She was not cruel. She was not vengeful. She was calm, steady, and strong. Valric watched, awestruck. The shadows shrank back, retreating into the corners of the courtyard. The council gasped. Even the oldest vampires whispered in disbelief. Illyra turned her gaze to Valric. "It is done," she said. "I have control," he corrected, voice low. "You have mastery, and in doing so, you have saved us all."
Silence followed.
Then, slowly, the council bowed their heads. some reluctantly, some in awe. They understood that a new power had entered the night court, a force that would not bow to fear or cruelty, but to justice, mercy, and choice. Elira felt exhaustion settle over her, but also a strange sense of freedom. For the first time in her life, she had walked without fear. She had seen without dependence, and she had stood beside the one who had saved her, and whom she had learned to trust, perhaps even to care for, in the truest sense. Valeric approached, his silver eyes softening. "You were magnificent," he said. "Stronger than even I imagined." Elira smiled faintly.
And you?
"You are no longer just my sight. You are my partner in all this." He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "If you will have me," he said. "I do," she replied. For a long moment they simply stood. Two beings bound by choice, by power, and by something deeper than words. The city lay below them, calm in the moonlight, yet forever changed. And then, as if the world itself acknowledged their triumph, the stars above Eldamir shone brighter, their lights spilling into the courtyards and halls of the citadel. Shadows recoiled, not in fear, but in respect. The curse that had haunted her line for centuries was broken. Not by domination, not by sacrifice, but by understanding, courage, and trust. Valeric turned his gaze to the horizon. "A new dawn is coming," he said. Elira rested her head lightly on his shoulder. "Then we will face it, together." The wind stirred, carrying with it whispers of forgotten legends, of bloodlines long hidden, and of a world reborn. The night court had endured countless centuries of darkness, but tonight, light had returned, not just to the city, but to the hearts of two beings who had found redemption in each other. They did not speak of love, not yet. Words were small, pale tools compared to what had passed between them. But in silence they understood it all. They had survived cruelty, fear, and the weight of destiny. They had walked through shadows and emerged stronger. And now, standing side by side, they knew that nothing, not curse, nor prophecy, nor fear, could ever blind them again. The first rays of dawn touched the citadel, and for the first time in centuries, Valeric allowed the sun to graze his skin. He did not flinch. He did not look away. Elira watched him, her vision steady, her heart calm. The city below was waking, unaware of the battles fought in silence, unaware that the shadows had been tamed. But Elira and Valeric did not need the world's recognition. They had seen each other fully, had trusted each other fully, and in doing so had rewritten the story that centuries had tried to dictate. And as they turned together to face the rising sun, the night court, the city, and the world beyond, a quiet truth echoed in their hearts. They were no longer bound by fear, no longer blind, and no longer alone. The curse was gone. The bond was stronger, and the darkness had finally learned the shape of light.